Congressman, welcome back to the program. First reaction to the U.S. Supreme Court decision.
Yeah, very disappointed by the U.S. Supreme Court decision. And from a historical standpoint, too, I think that it's significant. And we need to have these discussions about race. But I want all of the WFA viewers to think about something. Think about, Chief Justice Earl Warren. If he were alive today, he would literally be over 100 years old. He was probably responsible for putting more Japanese Americans in internment camps than any other person in California, perhaps. But something changed in his life that made him desegregate our public schools, Brown versus the Board of Education, and many other subsequent decisions that he made that really improved the social, the economic, the political opportunities and equality for Black Americans. And so now I want you to think about today's Supreme Court. We have a Supreme Court justice that one that's African American that voted for this decision. You have one that has Black children. You have another one that seemed to intentionally have someone Black show up at his confirmation hearing.
Right.
Another talk about his experience with youth basketball and working on youth basketball, diverse leagues. But yet all of them worked together to really deal quite a blow to the Black community. And this is going to be one that is up there with any of the other ones that were terrible decisions that the courts made in respect to Black Americans. And
let me ask you
this one
that.
is right up there.
You said that this is a blow to the Black community.
Absolutely, it is. It's huge. Yeah, I can't understate it enough. For a lot of different reasons, a lot of different things that we won't have time to unpack on your show. But basically what the Supreme Court is saying is that if you're Black and you would like a good education from one of our nation's top universities, but for whatever reason you didn't score perfect on your SAT, that other considerations that all other people can be given, whether it's because their parents went to that university themselves, or whether it's because someone else that had a much lower GPA than you could dribble a basketball better than you could, or someone else maybe better at music than you, that they could be given special consideration. But you could not be given special consideration, even when you think about the historical discrimination that you and your ancestors have felt. And I just think that it is terrible. I think it's a blow to our country. And again, I'm surprised that Chief Justice Earl Warren, who probably didn't have, if you think about it, and how old he would be, it's not unlikely it's probably likely that he didn't even have Black friends and did not socialize with Blacks. And now you have people that have Black relatives and have Black people at their confirmation hearings. And they're setting us back socially. It's really sad, but that's the way that things state. So that's the way that things go right now. And so the fight continues.
Congressman, UT Austin is the only public university in Texas that's going to be affected by this. I believe Rice and Southern Methodist University in Dallas also have programs where they consider race for applicants. But if it's that limited in this state, at least, how far-reaching do you think this really is?
Yeah, and let me just say this. Schools are still going to use things like race when it comes to consideration in sports. For whatever reason, and again, we don't have time to unpack it on your show, people feel much more comfortable with the idea that you can give Black students, many of whom have much lower GPAs, much lower test scores, that they can come to a school and entertain you and jump for you and throw the ball for you and run the ball for you and shoot it for you. But for some reason, people get angry, including these 6 Supreme Court justices. Someone gets angry if a kid has a 3.8 GPA and a 1300 on his SAT, and he can't run and shoot and kick the ball for you. That's a big problem. So race is still going to be allowed when it comes to sports, but it's not going to be allowed for academics. And again, that's bad. And as a country, we need to talk about why we're comfortable with people being able to why you want to give somebody a break when it comes to sports, but when it comes to academics, you just don't want to give someone a break that may be a different race. I think that's sad.
Congressman, we've seen some big decisions from the U.S. Supreme Court in the past few days here. 8-1 decision said that that states cannot tell the executive branch who to arrest and deport along the border. And another decision you've seen too, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected a lawsuit that would have given states more power over federal elections. Many thought the conservative majority, the former President Donald Trump, really instituted into the U.S. Supreme Court, would run roughshod over liberal values and even moderate issues. But we haven't necessarily seen that until this decision now. What do you read into this U.S. Supreme Court, and can you really draw conclusions from it?
Yeah, I don't know, what this U.S. Supreme Court, how, when it comes to certain issues like that, sometimes they seem to be, more political than, and at other times they seem to be less. And so it's hard to draw. I would just say as mostly, conservative white Americans, they just probably felt uncomfortable despite their familial ties and friendships that they seem to have. They felt uncomfortable, giving Black Americans a break when it comes to being able to get enrolled into college, but certainly seem to be making some decent decisions on some other things. But it doesn't underscore just how drastic and how bad this particular decision is going to be for Black and brown Americans. It's going to be detrimental when it comes to college admissions.
What do you think is going to happen? Just fewer Blacks and Hispanics and Asians allowed into college?
I think that's probably what's going to be the result of that when it comes to a lot of our state universities, that even with affirmative action programs, as you know, Jason, these schools have had trouble recruiting African Americans outside of sports. To be quite frank with you, if you look at all of our large state universities, they've had a very tough time recruiting Black and brown students. And so I think that you're going to see less and less of Blacks and brown students on campus. So you're going to see less socialization, which I think is a huge problem. You think about the issues that we've had with certain fraternities and sororities on a lot of these large campuses that were racially motivated and racially related. It's because these kids, they go to these schools and sing these chants and things like that because they have never socialized or had Blacks as social equals amongst them. And as these schools get more segregated, you're probably going to see more incidents like that. And I think that is unfortunate. I don't see any upside with having our universities be less Black and brown.
Congressman, you're also on an organization called the Helsinki Commission, which is made up of members of legislatures and parliaments around the world. You're heading to Vancouver here very shortly, and one of the things on the agenda is going to be the attempted coup in Russia. Tell us what you expect to happen here this week.
Well, yeah, I'm leading a resolution to have the Wagner Group actually, and I've been working on it for months, to have the Wagner Group designated as a terrorist organization, and going to be working with other nations, European nations around this. The Helsinki Commission is made up of America, Canada, and European nations. And so I'm very proud of this work. It's long overdue. And we have a lot of other resolutions that we're going to be working on that's centered around Russia's unlawful invasion of the Ukraine. And so I really do hope that this meeting is productive. I expect it to be so. And I am looking forward to, again, just making a statement and working with these other member state organizations and condemning the Russians and what they've done.
Why is it so important to declare the Wagner Group a terrorist organization?
When you look at what they've done, not just as it relates to Ukraine, but the things they've done around the world in places like Africa, where they have basically trained mercenaries to go into countries and create just unspeakable and terrible atrocities and barbaric acts. And they need to be designated as a terrorist organization. It's no question that they are. And they're one of the most effective, and it would be, I think, the perfect time to just sort of highlight everything that they've done, regardless of what happens to the group moving forward. As you know, obviously, they've now been moved out of Russia and they're in Belarus, but their leader remains very much relevant, and we need to make sure that he knows that the world is watching him.
Congressman, we appreciate the time, and be safe on the travels.
Hey, thank you very much. Good to see you.